Good evening and welcome to Decision Points. Tonight we are, we're going live at, what is it, around 11 o'clock? Yeah, 11:36 Eastern Standard Time because of the madness that's going on in the Middle East, which I'm sure you're aware of, and that's why you're tuning in as well. So this is, destabilizing to say the least. We're getting put into a very dangerous position, and so anyway, we just wanted to log in here and share with you not only what's going on in the news to give you an update on the details, but also to give you our take on it. We've been looking at MSNBC, Fox News, and CNN, and we're seeing a lot of similarities there. Not to be not surprisingly from mainstream media, but it's painting kind of a scary picture, one where the U.S. is likely going to be kind of stepping in to support to Israel and to block the incoming missiles and to kind of create a situation where Iran will be afraid to do anything back, or potentially if Iran still goes forward, perhaps puts us in a situation where we are getting attacked and have to attack Iran in a more meaningful manner, which is awful because honestly, Israel is completely in the wrong here, unfortunately. And it's scary what could happen because of it. I think, and I hate to say it because there's good people over there, I'm sure, but the fact that they're attacking Iran just for moving forward with a nuclear program, not a weaponized program. Basically, they're just using this as an excuse to escalate things and to become dominant in the region once again at a time when, frankly, a lot of public opinion around the world and finally in the U.S. is starting to come against them. So anyway, without further ado, I just wanted to kind of move forward and take a step back, though, because since the protests in Los Angeles earlier this week, something has felt off with us. The choreography, the media framing, the overblown scale, it all felt a bit too polished, too perfectly timed, and honestly just not organic. There wasn't really any incident that prompted it. There was no George Floyd moment, and yet there was so much organization, the printed signs, just everything about it just felt wrong. And then looking into things too, there's financing stuff that we actually were gearing up to do a segment on. We were out the past 2 days, but we have that in the works and still may move forward with it. But it was not an organic movement. And at first, our conspiracy-minded thoughts went towards, are they trying to detract from Greta's visit, which was timed up on the anniversary of the USS Liberty, which is a story, if you haven't If you're not familiar with it, you should look it up, Google it. We also covered it an episode or two back. But anyway, suffice it to say that we thought that the weirdness of that was to detract the news cycle and push it towards this thing, which is kind of an anti-Trump thing, and to kind of detract from the Greta visit, which was building momentum, we felt, towards some change, and we were kind of hopeful towards that. But in any event, yeah, that's what our initial thoughts were. But even then, that felt like too too far of a stretch. The scale of that was too small for them to do such a big campaign and to organize all this stuff just to detract from Greta, as newsworthy as she could be. That seemed like too small of a fish to fry. So anyway, we did start getting nervous, however, when we started hearing about the U.S. embassies across the Middle East were quietly evacuating non-essential personnel, and that was not a good sign. Anyway, it was a flashing red signal to anyone who's paying attention, but still we didn't believe Israel would go this far, and certainly not yet, unprompted. The talks about Iran enriching uranium. That's almost midnight. I've lost it, but anyway, that seemed like too small of a thing. That couldn't possibly be the reason for escalation, and particularly not military escalation. But in any event, things did escalate, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So in the first segment, we're going to kind of go over what we know. And so we'd like to give you kind of the top 10 things that you need to know right now. This is not fluff. This is the situational awareness that you'll need to kind of form an opinion about how you feel about things, because things are going to escalate quick, and you need to kind of be out there to voice your opinion about this. So before we break it down, let's begin with a video that just came in, actually. This footage is from Tehran, and it captures the moments the explosions rock the skyline. Let's take a look here. And so these are the first strikes. And I believe, and we'll go over this in a little bit, but they were hitting the nuclear facilities, but there also were strikes as well on personnel. I think one of the top military guys was hit. So, okay, that's enough of that. Okay, so yeah, Israel had a coordinated strike on Iranian soil targeting nuclear and military installations in and around Tehran. The operation, which apparently is dubbed Rising Lion, struck facilities believed to be tied to Iran's nuclear centrifuge program and the IRGC missile development. Casualties as of yet are unconfirmed. But Iranian state media has acknowledged military losses. Western sources indicate that high-value IRGC personnel were killed. The U.S. has stated publicly that it was not involved in the operation through private coordination with it. Though private coordination with Israel is widely assumed. There was a press release from Marco Rubio, who basically put it out there that we were not involved in the coordination, but he kind of implied that we knew about it, and he stressed that Iran should not even think about striking the U.S. But it did raise questions as to whether we knew about it beforehand, which isn't great, and it didn't necessarily express that solidarity with Iran. or I'm sorry, with Israel. But yeah, so I was kind of so-so on that. I think he's being very diplomatic, but he's also not committing us to supporting Israel, which that's at least a positive because Rubio is super pro-Israel, and he I think was uh, voted in by the Senate unanimously, and with as much of the Senate that is bought by AIPAC, that didn't really give me warm feelings and confidence. But anyway, we're kind of neutral on that. So moving on, air travel across the region has been severely disrupted, with major airlines halting flights over Iranian and Israeli airspace. Oil prices have surged, so if you're still up, I would buy gas now if you're feeling spry because they will be up tomorrow as soon as they get the chance to change the prices. And this is consistent with, kind of when war erupts in these areas, prices do go up. Protests have erupted in Iran with reports of anti-government and anti-Israel demonstrations already. Some of these may have been staged for messaging, some believe. The U.S. military assets have been repositioned, with carrier groups moving towards eastern Mediterranean. Again, perhaps we will be protecting Israel as we did in the past to intercept missiles, but as far as I'm concerned, like this is crazy and Israel should be on their own. We don't need to get pulled into this. It's not a war that has any value. They're just kind of flexing, and yeah, I really hope that we don't get involved, but I'm afraid that may be a foregone conclusion. But in any event, this is why we're here. This is why we're sharing perspectives. I think actually would recommend to you Redacted just did an episode talking about this, kind of reading the tea leaves and seeing this might happen. I would recommend you check that out to get a good kind of background from experts on this. They had a great expert who's very versed in this. Also, Tucker Carlson had a great episode with an esteemed political science expert. Just I think it just got released yesterday actually, but he recorded it on Monday, and I'm blanking on the name. I can look it up here. But yeah, I would check that out as well. Who was his guest? Oh yeah, this dude. Um, oh yeah, Jeffrey Sachs. So he was excellent. And actually, yeah, let me just play a clip of that for you guys. Oh, okay. And now I'm just seeing that the desktop audio is not set up. Better to figure this out now. Um, okay, just give me 1 second. System. Okay, here we go. Stream mix. Hmm. Alright, here we go. Audio. Wavelength. I think that. Nope. Browser. How's that working? Okay, I think we're good now. No. Desktop audio. System. Browser. Sorry guys, 1 second, I think I've got it figured out here. Browser, okay.
Drone attack.
Okay, we got it. Cool. Yeah, so since we've been talking about it, I'm gonna play this clip from
The
Sachs.
Ukrainian SBU, the intelligence agency, launched 2 attacks deep inside Russia. One, a straightforward terrorist attack, blowing up a civilian railroad, killing a large number of children and people going off for holidays by blowing up a railroad and a railroad bridge inside Russia. The second operation was profoundly more dangerous. Zelensky proudly gave it the name afterwards of Operation Spiderweb, which should tell you a lot. And that was a drone attack on several military bases, hundreds or thousands of kilometers inside Russia's territory, on Russia's strategic bomber fleet, meaning the...
Okay, we'll stop there. So actually, I forgot. That has more to do with the Ukraine-Russia conflict. So you could pass on that, but the redacted one is going to talk about the Israel situation. So I would recommend checking that out. So anyway, moving on here. So yeah, cyber activity between Israel, Iran, and proxy actors has spiked, suggesting additional non-kinetic escalations as well. This is the largest direct military confrontation between Israel and Iran in decades, and it may only be the beginning. As you may know, there was another conflict with them earlier, which we'll talk about later. But before we move on, here's a short statement from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Let me try that again. Before we move on, here's a short statement from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that he made earlier today, which gives us a glimpse into Israel's mindset and mission. Watch closely as he uses the phrase that he's already shaping into global headlines, finish the job. And that's actually the caption on our thumbnail for this. Okay. Actually, sorry. Thought we had that ready, but... Okay, here we go.
And in breaking news coming in, the Israeli Air Force conducted airstrikes on Iran with explosions being heard across Iran's capital, Tehran. The IDF spokesperson has said Israel launched a precise and integrated preemptive strike based on high-quality intelligence with the aim of striking the Iranian nuclear program and in response to the Iranian regime's ongoing aggression against Israel. Dozens of Air Force aircraft completed the opening strike, which included attacking dozens of military targets, including nuclear targets in various areas of Iran. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made the statement saying, "We are at a decisive moment in Israel's history. Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion against the Iranian threat to Israel's survival. He said our pilots are striking many targets in Iran. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program, targeting Iran's main enrichment facility. He added that Israel has also struck the heart of Iran's ballistic missile program and that this operation will continue for as many days as it takes. Israel has declared a state of emergency, warning of a retaliatory action from Tehran as well. Defense Minister Israel Katz said Israel conducted a preemptive strike against Iran and that a missile and drone attack against the state of Israel and its civilian population is expected in the immediate future. Air raid sirens were heard in Jerusalem after the Defense Ministry declared a state of emergency. The blast took place after US President Donald Trump warned that Israel could soon strike Iran's nuclear sites. President Trump has called National Security Cabinet meeting as well. So this is the latest that we are getting from West Asia. In the latest, Israeli Air Force carried out airstrikes on Iran with explosions heard across Iran's capital, Tehran. From what we do know so far, the aim was striking the Iranian nuclear program and in response to the Iranian regime's ongoing aggression against Israel. That's the latest that we do know right now. For more on this, we're now being joined by our correspondent Susan Tehrani from New York. Susan, thank you so much for joining us. This is the latest that is coming in. To call it an escalation at this point would be an understatement. What can you tell us, Susan? We also know that Donald Trump has called a National Security Cabinet meeting as well. What can we expect?
That's right, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio is part.
Okay, well, that's enough on that. Didn't deliver on the Netanyahu statement. That's what that clip was supposed to be, but ChatGPT led me astray. Anyway, so yeah, before we move on, I do just want to take a quick peek back into history and look at what happened last time in the last conflict between Iran and Israel. So to understand where this could be heading, let's rewind to the last time these two powers clashed in the open. In April of 2024, Israel struck what it described as an Iranian Quds Force intelligence hub inside the Iranian consulate in Damascus. The strike killed, like this time, a senior IRGC general and multiple Hezbollah operatives. Iran responded with over 300 drone and ballistic missiles in a historic first, a direct attack on Israel territory. Nearly all were intercepted. Israel followed up with a precision airstrike deep inside Iran, targeting missile production sites, radar installations, and even nuclear research facilities. The operation was called Days of Repentance, and it marked a massive shift from covert ops to overt warfare. The exchange ultimately ended without a full war, but the infrastructure, doctrine, and political will for escalation were all laid out then and now. Were laid out then, and now it appears they've been activated again. So the next question we have to ask is the U.S. about to get involved? So now comes the trillion-dollar question. Will the United States join the fight? Officially, the U.S. has denied involvement in the current Israeli strike, but let's be honest, Israel's air defense, targeting intel, and regional logistics are all deeply tied into the U.S. systems. Behind the scenes, you can be certain there was at least a green lighting, if not joint planning, despite what Marco Rubio said. More tellingly, the U.S. forces in CENTCOM are now on the move. And we heard about the carrier being moved. The carrier strike groups are repositioning in the Mediterranean and Arabian seas. Bases in Kuwait, Bahrain, and Qatar are reportedly on high alert. The Pentagon has quietly begun moving Patriot and THAAD batteries back into high-threat areas. This doesn't mean war is inevitable, but it does mean the U.S. is bracing for one, which obviously I'm not excited about. So what might draw us in? Here are the likely triggers. Excuse me. A direct Iranian attack on U.S. forces or embassies, which is something that has been threatened. If Israel attacked, Iran said that they would attack U.S. bases. Another possible trigger is Hezbollah launches rockets into Israel from Lebanon, drawing in IDF ground forces. Another potential is a cyber attack on U.S. infrastructures that can be linked to Tehran. A closure of the Strait of Hormuz, which impacts global oil supply, is the last one. Now, to understand what Iran might do next, here's how the Iranian regime responded earlier today. This clip shows the IRGC's top commander signaling what could be a direct challenge to both Israel and the United States. So, hopefully the third clip's a charm here. Let's see what we got. Oh, this is another dumb clip. Okay, well, anyway, that's a fail. Okay, so rather than playing these clips that ChatGPT swore were the pertinent ones and would be perfect for the script, we are going to switch over to mainstream media and just take a look at what's playing over there.
And that the U.S. was not involved. While in Israel itself, air raid sirens over Jerusalem, the country in a state of emergency amid fears that Iranian retaliation could come at any time. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the targets included Iran's main nuclear enrichment facility at Natanz. You see video of a burning site there. Prime Minister Netanyahu also says Iran made so much progress with its nuclear program that it became an existential threat to Israel.
Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear weaponization program. We targeted Iran's main enrichment facility in Natanz.
We killed their
targeted
scientists.
Iran's leading nuclear scientists working on the Iranian bomb. We also struck at the heart of Iran's ballistic missile program.
So he admits it.
CNN's Oren Lieberman joins us now from...
We murdered a scientist. Wow, on national television. So, yeah, I think this might be the same guy who was on earlier. I guess they're staying up late tonight. But one thing I wanted to mention is between the three networks, actually CNN was the best about not saying it's a foregone conclusion that the U.S. is going to get involved. But we'll see if that continues. I really don't hope that's the case. I think we as a people need to push forward and kind of be vocal about the fact that we want nothing to do with this war, that this is not a righteous war, that we, in fact, want Israel to stop fighting all wars and to allow food to go to Gaza and to kind of treat them humanely and not, like rabid animals that need to get put down. Yeah, so we'll see. Rising Lion. Very upset that this is getting legitimized. But yeah, let's take another listen from CNN, and then we can bounce around to some other networks.
First statement here, he said, in a short statement, we are after a very successful opening strike. With God's help, we are going to have many more achievements. So the threat very much on the table now that the strikes aren't over yet and that there are many more potentially to come. The question, of course, now, when is Iran's retaliation coming? Iran has made it abundantly clear that that will come not only against Israel, but also against U.S. assets in the Middle East. Israel is bracing for potentially something much larger than what we saw in Iran's previous two retaliatory attacks on Israel. And those...
So, yeah, about that, Iran was very reserved last time, but showcased their ability and the capabilities of their weapons. Had not the U.S. gotten involved, Israel would have suffered major, major losses. Their Iron Dome or whatever it is was caught with its pants down, and they would have gotten hurt pretty bad if not for the U.S. involvement. My wish is that we just stayed out of it, and I don't know what it would take for that to happen. Like a secret wish of mine is like, well, not secret, is that maybe Trump, even though he seems like he's so in the pocket of the Israelis and is kind of going backwards on what, his anti-war promises that he made. He seems to, say everything's out the window when it comes to Israel. But yeah, my hope is that he was just kind of playing the fool up until the point where Israel got themselves in a lot of trouble, and then just all of a sudden be like, hey, sorry guys, you guys are on your own, in a way that would take out Israel and their power against him, um, and but not not giving them enough forenotice to kind of take him out. And tied into that is the assumption that perhaps they were the ones who worked to get those multiple assassination attempts against him. But that's height conspiracy theory, so probably not true. But that's my little daydream. But anyway, let's take a look at some of the other networks before we sign off here, and kind of give some takes on that. Let's see if I can navigate this. Nope. Sorry, I'm not used to using YouTube TV on my browser here. There we go. So yeah, we'll check out MSNBC and Fox News. There's Fox. Okay, this guy's
this thing back
pretty
rolling
good.
again? Is that too much hope? Because just reading into what President Trump is still hoping they can get a deal done, and if there's a back and forth, it seems highly unlikely.
Well, I would say that the number of strikes and the scale of the strikes and the targets included by the Israeli Air Force is far broader than anything we saw back in October or April of last year. Those were very pinprick. They were designed not to escalate. They didn't target the nuclear facilities, for instance. They went after Iranian air defenses and other targets. But this is very different. They have now killed top Iranian leaders. They have hit Natanz, the leading enrichment site. This will, if you take the Supreme Leader at his word, they are planning a very, very large response. The Iranian leadership will have to respond. The president and the White House hopes the...
Yeah, I mean, like, they should respond. They're getting attacked. Like, their top people, their top scientists. Like, this is like, if you can imagine the same thing happened to us, like, this is all-out war. And for them to not respond in kind wouldn't make any sense. The only thing that they have to worry about is if the U.S. gets involved and attacks them, then they're totally screwed. But this is all based on them enriching uranium so that they can have a nuclear program just for civilian use, not to the level I think they need to enrich it to 10% to do weapons. They just want 3% to get more power. And the other thing too, the other subtext here is Iran is kind of doing very poorly economically. I think I had heard rumblings that the Iranian people were not happy with their leader, and so I did some research to see, like, oh, is he a bad guy? What's his deal? And they do have a kind of a religious leader, dictatorship-ish type thing. But their issue with him is that the economy is doing bad, and it's not that he's fighting wars or he's a bad person for this or that. I think that they've got some social things, in terms of maybe women's rights or whatever that isn't great, but like for that area, that's kind of par for the course. But he himself is not bad, but their economy is bad. And so, with that said, having a nuclear program for energy would be a way for them to lift themselves up. And I don't think that Israel is really afraid of them developing a nuclear weapon because their intel is so good they would find out in time. But I think they're really just trying to kick them and keep them down, like they want all the other nations in the region to be kicked down. And Iran is the only one that of Netanyahu's list that he put together around 9/11 time in the early aughts, is the only one that the U.S. hasn't started a war with and has taken down at the knees. Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, obviously, like all of these different groups have had their leadership toppled and are now easy for Israel to push around. And so now Israel is kind of pushing the agenda here to start a war with them, and it's not a good situation. We got to find our way away from this. So anyway, we'll listen to the volume here. Oh, Brett Baer on the phone.
I wonder, Brett, if you also think that if one of the proxies, if the Houthis or Hamas or Hezbollah somehow get involved in attacking American assets, does that mean the negotiating table is done?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see an entirely different dynamic, and it would be tough in that environment for Steve Witkoff to sit at a table across from Iranian negotiators as that is happening. If you remember, back before October 7th, the proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, acted, and in just a few days after it was being clearly signaled that Israel and Saudi Arabia were on track to negotiate and to possibly get together in some kind of deal, that's when October 7th happened a few days later. They have a lot of reach with those proxies that can be part of their retaliation plan. We just don't know what it looks like as of yet, but it's going to be something.
I just want to run this by you, Brett, because per your conversation with President Trump a little bit earlier, the Wall Street Journal now reporting, the headline reads, Trump told Netanyahu on Monday not to attack Iran. On Monday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu raised the possibility of strikes in a phone conversation with President Trump, according to two U.S. officials. Trump responded that he would like to see diplomacy run its course before turning to military options. I think that pretty much squares. He knew, as you were saying earlier, but apparently Benjamin Netanyahu decided not to take his advice.
Fucking crazy.
Yeah, so, he knew, he acknowledged that he did say that at days ago, but that the dynamic changed. And I reported a couple of days ago that he had said that the negotiations had floundered, that Iran was becoming much more aggressive.
They hadn't even had the negotiations. We're scheduled to have the negotiations this week.
Between Monday and tonight, there was this acknowledgement that Israel was going to strike, and the president was clearly aware of it, as was the rest of the administration.
Brett Baer, the chief political anchor, live for us on the phone. Brett, great information all night. If you get something, we will put you back on the air. Thank you, sir.
Sounds good.
Meantime, let's bring in Wiz Buckley. Wiz clearly is a former fighter pilot. He is also a pilot, and we brought him on the show originally to talk about the air crash in India that tragically today killed 240 people, Wiz. But we want to get your expertise on the strikes that happened tonight, Israel on Tehran. We hear that the Natanz nuclear site was hit and that top scientists were killed. This sounds to me, Wiz, like a very successful, very precise mission, and Israel did kind of what they attempted to do, which was to take off the head of the snake, the top leadership.
Trace, absolutely.
Okay,
we used the term in the early 90s.
I think we're done with them, but clearly they're presenting this as Israel did what they were, looking to do, that cutting the head off the snake, as if Iran was a snake. All they were doing was negotiating to develop a nuclear program for, for the benefit of their people, not for, weapons grade uranium. So yeah, they're just kind of legitimizing it. So that's not a good look. Like I said, CNN was better than Fox and also MSNBC. So I'm not hoping for much from MSNBC, but we'll see where things are. They're all owned by the same billionaires, so it would make sense that they will do what they normally do. Oh, okay.
He decided that it would censure Iran and find it culpable of being in breach with its nuclear obligations for the first time in 20 years. Now, that may be the pretext that we've heard from the Israelis already saying that that was unacceptable. That may be the pretext that Benjamin Netanyahu decides was sufficient for him to then launch this attack. But certainly there's been mounting concern about Iran's nuclear activity, and no one's really been convinced that its program is purely civilian. But I think, as I said at the beginning, I think most people had expected this to play out over some time, had expected a more gradual build-up, possibly with the kind of twin-track diplomacy we've seen between the Iranians and the Israelis, although getting bogged down and faltering, being given more time to try and make progress, but also some kind of UN-sponsored diplomacy, such as we might have seen, we did see during the build-up to the Iraq War. I think there was an expectation of a process that would start unfolding, and the clock would start ticking, and we would start seeing a countdown towards possible military action. Well, the Israelis have jumped the gun, and they've clearly decided to do so because they believe that surprise will help them, that time is not on their side, and the longer they let the clock play out. And they've decided to choose this moment to attack Iran, probably when Iran was not expecting it either, although there have been warnings in the last few days that some kind of military action was imminent. Yeah. I think, as I say, most observers, particularly in Israel, but probably in Iran as well, had thought that that was a bit of a bluff, and that Israel was being used by the Americans to give Donald Trump a bit of muscle in his negotiations with the Iranians. Sort of Israeli heavies coming on side to try and put pressure on the Iranians in these nuclear talks. And I think, the Israelis have surprised us by making it clear this wasn't a bluff. This was not a negotiating tactic. This was for real, this threat of military action. They're carrying it out now, and they will continue to do so over the coming days. And clearly their intent is to try and totally destroy the nuclear threat they've always believed emanates from the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Dominic, you mentioned the United Nations a little earlier. Do you think that any of the neighboring Arab countries or other Western nations have any role to play in trying to lessen tensions between Iran and Israel?
I think they'll want to play a role, and we saw them come to the aid, some of them, of Israel during those attacks, those direct attacks and exchange of fire between the Israelis and the Iranians last year. We saw the Jordanians giving the Israelis the right to fly through their airspace to try and repel the attacks from Iran. We may see attempts diplomatically, I think, now from regional neighbours to try and defuse the tensions. But clearly Israel has the bit between its teeth, and Israel is not going to, I think, hold back or ease its military pressure on Iran until it believes it's got somewhere near achieving its military objectives. So I think, as you say, we're going to see frantic diplomatic activity to try and make this as short as possible and to reduce the tensions and trying to contain this as much as diplomats can, so it doesn't spiral into a much bigger escalating regional crisis. But in the past, when Israel believes it has a job to do, it tends to carry it out regardless of what other observers and other outside powers make of what it's doing. And I think we have to stress here, there is a risk of, I think people waking up today will be shocked, deeply alarmed by what Israel is doing against Iran.
I hope so.
Shocked, regardless of where they come down in the debate over Iran's nuclear program. But we have to stress it could get a lot worse. If Israel continues with this and Iran does strike back, and I think it's a fairly big if Iran has still got the wherewithal to escalate this further, Iran is unlikely to aim its fire this time just at the Jewish state. It's going to be striking back, as it's warned in the past, left, right and centre, lashing out, trying to make the price for this action by Israel simply too high for it to continue. So, we'll have to see what the Iranians do, but the expectation has always been that if they were struck, they wouldn't just strike back at Israel, they would fire across the Gulf, towards the UAE, possibly towards Bahrain, towards Qatar, where American bases are, but also the oil refineries, oil installations, to make the pain that they'll be feeling shared with not just regional neighbours, but obviously the rest of us, because if the Persian Gulf goes up in flames, if this really important strategic waterway becomes a war zone.
So I need to do some research into this. I don't know why they would attack UAE or Qatar or the U.S. installations. I've heard that claimed multiple times, but that doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't they just hit Israel? Israel was the one who attacked them. So I understand it's part of the narrative, but I want to double check that because it seems just wrong, particularly when public opinion in the U.S. is building against Israel. It seems like a terrible move. In theory, you could at least get the U.S. to pull back support of Israel. One other thing I wanted to mention is on one of the earlier broadcasts, I think it was a clip from Benjamin Netanyahu, and I'll have to pull that for tomorrow, but he was saying something to the effect, or I'm sorry, this was one of the MSNBC people, was saying that people are going to cheer in the streets in Iran. The Iranians will cheer in the streets when they hear about what Israel did. And she was implying that overthrowing the leader, which is what's gonna come next, that they're gonna be so happy about it, they'll all be cheering and rooting for Israel, which it's building a narrative that the Americans can latch onto and be like, oh, cool, and so the people there are oppressed and they want it too, but like I said before, the only thing that I found tangible that the people have against the current leader is the fact that the economy is bad. And so then he tries to assert himself and, allow for, nuclear energy to help things out, and they get smacked down. So anyway, I'll put the volume up here for a second, but yeah, this seems to be kind of a international MSNBC, which is a little bit more reasonable.
To get more out of the international community in what has been a tortuous process of negotiation over that nuclear program. But for the Israelis, it's clear that the Iranian program is a threat to them and therefore needs to be at some point eradicated. The challenge for the Israeli government, of course, has always been its massive military job to do so, and the Iranians have done whatever they can to bury their nuclear facilities, their enrichment facilities, deep underground in places like Natanz and Fordow, Kermanshah, in some cases actually under mountains. And the Israelis have used a number of ingenious methods to try and counter and destroy and slow down its nuclear progress. So they've, along with the Americans, came up with an ingenious cyber weapon, Stuxnet, that actually blew up centrifuge machines using software to get inside the system of Iran's nuclear program and literally take out these machines one by one. They've also had a rolling assassination program, taking out one Iranian nuclear scientist after another, car bombs and other mysterious things going bang in the night, killing Iranian nuclear scientists. Now, they've added to that overnight by taking out, it seems, at least 3 Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps commanders, the chief of the IRGC, Hossein Salami, Khatam al-Anbiya, Gholam Ali Rashid, and the chief.
Okay, and actually, I want to just go into briefly go into some of the key timeline incidents that have led to this point. So April 1st, 2024, a little over a year ago, Israeli had a strike in Damascus. And that was Israel conducting a precise airstrike on the Iranian consulate annex in Damascus, claiming it was an IRGC QODS force facility. The casualties were 16 killed, including General Mohammed Reza Zahida of the IRGC. That's their, I think that it's the Iranian, I don't know what it stands for. I don't have that here, but it's their general. So that was that. And yeah, kind of bad. I'm going to have to do some research, and I'll do that now to see what precipitated or what was the reason why they said that was okay. But we'll put a pin in that for now. So on the 13th of April, that was when Iran had their first direct response, and that's when they fired the 300 missiles and drones toward Israel. Outcome of that was that Israel, with the U.S., the French, the Jordanian, and the Gulf support, intercepted 99%. And however, 9 missiles did hit air bases in southern Israel, causing minor damage. But they had the U.S., the U.K., the French, the Jordanians, and other Gulf support. It remains to be seen who of that group will be supporting this time around. But this is where sharing stuff on social media and having an opinion will pay off. So that's hopefully where you'll be at the end of the night, ready to make a decision to kind of push in the other direction. At minimum, like, we don't need to attack Israel for sure, but we need to sit this one out. That was not proper. Just like starving the Palestinians is not proper, and we need to start making principled stands on issues. So anyway, those were the two main incidents. On October 1st of 2024, Operation True Promise 2 was launched. And so that was Iran firing approximately 200 ballistic missiles at Israel and, yeah, hitting air bases. Israel shot down most, and only one Israeli was killed indirectly with a few minor injuries. And then Israel responded in October. A major Israeli retaliation, 3 strikes across Iran and parts of Iraq and Syria. So that was, yeah, maybe a little bit more, maybe not necessarily in this timeline, but this is what ChatGPT. So before we go here and we end this, I do want to just look and see what precipitated the April 1st Israeli strike in Damascus. What justified? Let's see what chat has to say. They usually are pro-Israel, so we'll take this with a grain of salt. The Israeli strike in Damascus in April 2024. I can bring this over here so you guys can see it. The Israeli strike in Damascus in April 2024 was justified by Israel on the grounds that it was targeting Iranian Quds, I don't know how to pronounce that, good, force leadership operating out of a diplomatic facility used as a military base. Here is a breakdown. Like, is this a bad thing? IQ, whatever. Okay. Target operations claim that the building struck was not a true consulate, but an Iranian military coordination center. So just because it's military doesn't justify attacking it. That's super weird. Used by Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Yeah, that's IRGC. So we gotta find out what this is, because that seems, if that's, I guess, Islamic, maybe that's some kind of a, maybe it's not related to Iran, maybe it's not their military, but we'll find out here in a second. But actively involved in planning attacks against Israeli and Western interests in Syria. So perhaps they were going to get involved um, in countering Israel, who I think is invading Syria. So like you're invading another nation, and these guys were going to help, and so you attack Iran too, because you're like, shut up, let me just kill Syria, leave me alone. Okay, so we got to look up these guys, see if they're inherently bad or if it's just Israel being a bully and trying to get the neighbors to not stop them from their terrible acts. Okay, elimination of high value targets, the strike. So just because a general is a high value target doesn't mean you can kill him and that's okay. It's like, what if we did that to Canada? Oh, their general is a high value target. Let's take him out. This just doesn't. I'm not Team Israel. Use of civilian or diplomatic cover. Israel accused Iran of hiding military command operations inside. I mean, what? Like, if you're in an active war with Iran, okay, fine. Maybe it's bad form to put them in civilian places, but like, if you guys aren't fighting, then why is that an issue? Why is that a justification? Why is that your third best justification, chat? Ongoing threat environment. Israel has a long maintained preemptive strikes in Syria, campaign between the wars doctrine. Okay, international reaction. You guys can see that. Iran called the strike a flagrant violation of international law and Syrian sovereignty, claiming it was an attack on the sovereign diplomatic facility. Oh, so this was in Damascus, which, yeah, forgive me my current, lack of knowledge about this area, but maybe Damascus is in Syria. Comment in the chat if you know. Um, Flagrant Syrian Hezbollah condemned it, framing it as an attack on all Iranian-aligned actors in the region. Okay, so maybe the if the Iranian general was there in Syria coordinating attack, I could maybe it's a little bit more acceptable. Okay, we'll see. Let's ask some questions. Who are the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps? No, it is. Yeah, it's the Iranian Special Operations Unit. And okay, where is Damascus? It is in Syria. Okay. So, yeah, Iran is meddling, but they're helping defend Syria. But they're getting involved. Okay. So, let's ask ChatGPT to make a judgment call. We'll say, should Iran or make the argument for Iran helping Syria? Were they wrong? Let's see what chat says. Here's a breakdown. Why did they help? Strategic alliance. They've been close allies since the 80s. Syria was one of the few Arab nations to support Iran during the Iran-Iraq War, which the U.S. kind of made Iraq attack Iran and paid for it. That loyalty created long-standing military and political partnership. Iran's rationale: Syria is Iran's only real Arab ally, state ally. Preserving Assad means preserving regional influence and the land bridge to Hezbollah in Lebanon. If Assad fell, Iran would lose a strategic corridor in the Mediterranean. Iran views itself as a leader of the axis of resistance against Israel, the U.S., and Western-backed regimes. Syria is central to that axis. Syria hosts Iranian weapon routes to Hezbollah. Religious and ideological grounds. Was Iran wrong to intervene? Depends on perspective. Against Iran's intervention, it prolonged the war, destabilized the region, empowered authoritarianism. Argument defending Iran's role prevented a failed state. From Iran's view, Syria was collapsing into jihad chaos. Groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda affiliates were seizing territory. Iran helped restore order and prevent a Taliban-style regime from rising in Syria's place. Self-defense by proxy. Claims it was acting to prevent terrorism from spreading across its borders. ISIS had already reached Iraq. Keep Assad in power to contain Sunni extremism. Loyalty. Okay. I don't know. Yeah. I or more recently have been thinking that it's not so complicated, but no, this is kind of complicated. Iran definitely does not like America. And for good reason, but yeah, maybe it's good they're fighting Israel. I don't know. I haven't come to my decision point on this, but I think we need to keep digging in and see where it takes us. But I don't buy the argument from Israel that Iran was about to have some nuclear weapons, that they needed to kill these generals. Yeah, and also just back to Syria, like what was Israel doing in Syria? That'll be the last thing, and then we're gonna call it. Why is Israel invading Syria? Is not formally invading Syria, and I told you, ChatGPT loves it some Israel. Israel is not formally invading Syria with ground troops, but it regularly carries out airstrikes and covert operations inside Syria. So it's not invading, it's just bombing them. But why? These actions are part of what Israel calls war between wars strategy, a sustained campaign to degrade Iran's military entrenchment in Syria without triggering full-scale war. I mean, that kind of sounds like what the U.S. pretends or says, or the people who believe in it says they're doing with Russia and the Ukraine, that we're wearing Russia down by giving weapons and support to the Ukraine and money and hundreds of billions of dollars. But anyway, that's like out of the same playbook. But still, like, why do you need to fight Iran, Israel? That's not justification. And then they justify attacking Iran because they're helping Syria. But you're the ones who started it, so you're mad at Iran for. Yeah, doesn't make sense to me. Here's the breakdown for why Israel targets Syria so frequently. Okay. Iran has used Syria as a forward base to project power. So just to flex muscles. That's reason to kill Syrians. Okay, the IRGC, Quad, Hezbollah, weapons factories, drone depots, and training facilities. So they've got bases there and they're friends. Okay, I've used that as a red line, and that's not a good justification. Okay, number 2, let's see if this is better. Weapons transfers to Hezbollah. Iran regularly attempts to move precision-guided missiles, drones, and advanced air defenses through Syria to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Okay, so that's the next thing. I guess we got to figure out what's going on in Lebanon before we can form an opinion. But if Israel is doing bad stuff in Lebanon, then all of this is not justified. These convoy depots, blah, 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 prevent Hezbollah from obtaining weapons needed to launch a mass casualty war. Prevent strategic entrenchment, maintaining military superiority, retaliation, deterrence. Okay. I said that was the last one, but we'll do one more. What's going on in Lebanon? No, I think it's going to answer generally. Israel and Hezbollah. Beirut targeting domestic impact. Take the perspective that Israel is wrong in Lebanon. Tell me why. Okay. Violations of sovereignty. Israel conducted regular airstrikes. Psych operations inside Lebanese territory, often without formal declaration of international war. Disproportional use of force. What started the fight? Okay. It's waging a sustained military campaign and weaken a country that disrespects sovereignty. Violates rule-based. This isn't defense, it's occupation by remote control. The roots, specifically Israel and Hezbollah, the dominant armed group base, are complex. Background, invasion of Lebanon. Okay, so it started with Israel invading Lebanon in 1982 to drive out the PLO. Oh, so like again, Israel just seems to start fights to be a bully. They didn't like the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, because they're trying to take over Gaza, and so they're like, "Oh, you can't have these heroes here. We're gonna invade you." Okay, cool. This invasion, long-term occupation of southern Lebanon, so they've been occupying Lebanon. They're like the Germany led by Hitler in World War II. Israel is. Hezbollah was born. So they were born Hezbollah. This big troublemaker was born out of an occupation. Yeah, no, I'm done. Decision made. This Israel is awful and should not be supported by the U.S. All right, it's late, guys. Thanks for tuning in. And so just to close things out here, up next yeah, nope. No, I'm just gonna wing it. Yeah, thanks for joining tonight. A lot to think about. We'll have more coverage tomorrow. I think, like I said, we did want to look into kind of the roots of the organized protests going on in LA and now around the world. No kings, and look at the funding of that because that's interesting. But that has now taken a second seat to what's going on in the Middle East. So we want to keep looking into that, but we will circle back and do some long form research into the roots of these protests. One thing that I didn't mention that I think is worth mentioning is the fact that these protests, if that they could be a distraction, but they also could be a signal. Assuming there's an Israeli connection here, that or the people pulling Israel strings are the same ones pulling these strings for the protest is that if that's going on, like, is it just a distraction, or is it a, hey, Donald Trump, look what we can do to your situation, the stuff you're trying to do, we can unravel it, we can cause, violent protests, we can turn people against your ICE agents, we can turn this into a PR nightmare. Don't make a mistake, just protect Israel. So it could be a flex to do that. Let me know what you think. These are my thoughts. Would love to hear yours. Your thoughts will inform, our thinking, and it's an ecosystem here. So let's keep it together. We're gonna try and put together some short form videos for our Instagram and YouTube Shorts account to kind of give stuff that people can share to help push our politicians to kind of move towards the right direction, because we should not be involved in this war at all. We need to, in fact, withhold support, turn our back on them so they learn change has to happen. And maybe Iran can smack them so hard that they get, start acting right in Gaza. We will see. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.